Webinar is called Resisting Replacement, a conversation with the Regional Council of Unrecognized Villages in the Negev. I want to say hi, first of all, to everyone in the US, in Israel, and in Palestine, and other places in the world. This is the latest Partners for Progressive Israel webinar in a series called Conversations with Israel and Palestine. My name is Ron Skolnick. I organize these webinars for Partners for Progressive Israel. And today's webinar is been organized in close cooperation with the Israeli NGO, the Regional Council for the Unrecognized Villages in the Negev. Today's discussion moderator will be Partners board member Rabbi Andrea London. And before I hand it over, let me note that Partners for Progressive Israel is a US not-for-profit that is dedicated to the achievement of a durable and just peace between Israel and its neighbors that includes an end to Israel's occupation based on a two-state solution. Partners supports Israelis working to ensure social justice, civil rights, Jewish-Arab partnership, and equality for all of Israel's inhabitants. The organization seeks to deepen Americans' understanding of the complexities of Israel and Palestine so that they can better advocate for a progressive future for all the inhabitants of the region. Partners is glad to be bringing this webinar to everyone for free. If you appreciate it and you'd like more programming like it, please visit progressiveisrael.org, and if you can, please make a contribution. I will mention before we get started that on June 1st at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Partners Executive Director, Rabbi Margot Hughes Robinson, is going to be leading a Shavuot teach-in session for the Revealing Liberation, the Torah of Solidarity teach-in. It's going to be a group of about 15 different teach-ins. I'm going to put the registration link for that teach-in in the chat as we move forward, and so you're invited to join that over Shavuot. Just a quick word about chat and the Q&A. Both are open. The chat is not designed for your questions. That's for the Q&A. We're not monitoring the chat for questions, so please feel free to chat via the chat. But if you have a question for our panelists, please place that in the Q&A. Now let me quickly introduce our panel and then hand it over. Dr. Yeela Raanan is the co-general manager of the Regional Council of Unrecognized Villages. Dr. Raanan has been actively involved in advocating for the rights of residents in unrecognized villages for 25 years and has been part of the village's leadership organization for 2 decades. Dr. Raanan holds a PhD in anthropology of the Middle East, gender studies, economy, and society from the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. She's currently pursuing a master's degree in contemporary Jewry from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and has a bachelor's degree in mathematics from the Hebrew University. She is a resident of Kibbutz Kisufim. Lobna El-Sana is a Bedouin architect and artist from the Palestinian village of Lakia, who serves as an urban planner on the RCUV team. Her research advocates for the unrecognized villages in the Naqab, or the Negev. It's shaping architectural discourse and recording societal narratives. El-Sana's ongoing project called Unrecognized Villages proposes alternative documentation means, as well as architectural building methodologies for these villages to develop their homes, communities, and farming based on their local and historical knowledge met with contemporary technologies. Last but not least, Rabbi Andrea London, our moderator today, is a nationally recognized Jewish leader who has served at Beth Emet Synagogue since 2000 and who has been the congregation's senior rabbi since 2010. Rabbi London is deeply engaged in all aspects of congregational life, including worship, life cycle events, counseling and support, adult education, youth education, and programming, social action, and interfaith relations. She strives to teach and encourage individuals and communities through contemplative, social, and spiritually based actions. Rabbi London is also a board member of Partners for Progressive Israel. Let me now hand things over to our moderator, Rabbi Andrea London. I'll be back at the end to wrap up proceedings. I hope you find the webinar informative and enriching.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Yeela and Lobna, for being with us today. Looking forward to the conversation. We'll talk for about 35 minutes, and then I will start to take questions from the Q&A. So if you have questions as we go along, put them there, and I will look there in about 35 minutes. So I'd like to begin with both of you, Lobna and Yeela. If you can talk with us about how and why you got involved in this issue. How is it near and dear to your heart? And what are you hoping to accomplish by your involvement with the unrecognized Bedouin villages? Lobna, you want to begin?
Yes, I can begin. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming here to hear us, to hear about the Regional Council of the Unrecognized Bedouin Villages. We are speaking about 100,000 citizens, even more, that live in villages that have been forbidden from basic infrastructures. Yes, today in 2025, people don't have proper water pipes and don't have proper electricity. People that go to universities and seek education and are actually incredible people. And I'm not saying that because I'm Bedouin myself. The work of or my work within the villages started, I guess, when I realized that there's a lot of beauty and also truth that exists within these villages, and I was a little afraid of them being erased. So I remember I realized that I didn't know anyone. I was 19 years old. So I took my camera and I started documenting each village as much as possible. That was my idea. If I document it, so even if it gets erased, the next ages can still get to remember the village, something I did not get. I grew up in a Ligiye, which was a town, which it's considered to be a township. Now I might speak in different terms if something is unclear. Please let me know. But it's considered to be one of the townships that after Israel declared we are not proper to the Bedouin lifestyle is not proper to exist within a modern democratic state. It came out with a brilliant idea that is not so brilliant, to be honest, about establishing 7 townships that within them all of us would be concentrated. Now, from my intimate personal perspective of someone who grew up in one of those townships, I can tell you these townships lost a lot. We lost the actual spatial values of a Bedouin village. These are not Bedouin townships. These are, I guess, top-down planned township that were forced on us. And you know, when you live your life, you design the space. Now, when a space is designed upon you, it forces a certain life on you. So you live a life you don't really like. And that's the way many of us are living within the townships. I'm not speaking about the unrecognized villages, but this point, the lack of authenticity and the lack of truth within these spaces pushed me to look for it or to seek for value and for something that resonates with my personal truth within the villages. And having architecture as my tool, as my instrument, as my vernacular, I don't know if that's how it's called, but this glass you look at something through. I started working within the villages. I developed letters where actually they are manuals of how you can build your house, not as a political tool, because what is happening is that everything has been politicized. We try to survive, and I say we. I'm too privileged to say we. Wallah, I'm not we. I live in a township. I have electricity and water. At least that it's a very bad township, but I have basic services that the villages don't have. The people in the villages. So the manuals were that I created mainly tried to improve life within the villages without waiting for Israel to recognize them, because the awakening it's a stolen time. we wait for something that might not come. Ages grow within this awaiting. Ages grow while told to await for recognition. And from my perspective, it was a little bit unbearable anymore to wait. And I think the human is very creative when he's called to act. So the idea was to really think about means to improve our spaces of living before the recognition comes, to improve the infrastructure, maybe with low-tech ideas and etc., but before the recognition comes. And that really took me and placed me in the space with the people that fits this mission best, which is the Council of the Unrecognized Villages, where together, I think in a daily basis almost, we try to come out with ideas of how can we serve these spaces. We are a small team, let's be realistic. We're not a government, but together with other bodies, we ask ourselves the question of how can we empower and serve the villages in a way that can improve life in them, in a way where a decent human being can grow and dream and seek future and career without feeling oppressed, without feeling resentment. And that's something we've been working on, I guess, which is very hard to speak about today with all the demolition we've been witnessing. And yes, I say that a lot, that as an architect within this field, I can say for sure that I see more demolitions than I see houses being built. And that has become something we need to take into consideration. When I speak with someone about his house and what he wants in his house, the idea that it might be demolished is in the room. And this, and it is tragic, but it has become a tragic part, integrative part of the life of 100,000 citizens in here. Yeah, and I want to ping pong it with Yeela, and I really think that questions, the Q&A is where all the magic happens. So I'm not gonna spill the tea. And I wish you could all come tomorrow to the demonstration. You would see it all very clearly. But yes, Yeela, go ahead.
Thank you, Lubna. It's a joy to work with you. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, everybody, Andrea and Ron, and everybody that's here and is listening to us. And Andrea, you asked why I'm here, why am I here with the Regional Council? I grew up in the Negev, so this for me is my home. This, if you guys who are listening know a bit of the geography of the south of Israel, I grew up in Arad, which is in the heart of the Negev. And so for me, I am acting within my house, within my home, with my neighbors. And I see injustice. And so it's stark, horrible injustice. It's ruthless injustice and has been since the beginning of the state of Israel. And when there is such horrible and ruthless injustice, I must speak up. That's my feeling. And so that's why I am in the RCUV, the Regional Council for the Unrecognized Villages. It's got more layers. This is an organization that was created by the leaders of the unrecognized villages. And it emulates as much as possible a governmental regional council. So we have villages. There are 36 unrecognized villages nowadays. We started off in 1997 with more. We actually succeeded. We have 11 villages recognized. And each village has a committee, and each committee sends its representative to this RCUV. And these leaders, among themselves, once every 5 years, elect their head. And so, in effect, I am giving service to a indigenous organization. And this is the way that I strongly understand and believe that I, as a privileged Jew inside Israel, need to work with a minority that is suffering such injustices. And so the big injustice is non-recognition. What non-recognition means, there is a village. It has been there since before the state of Israel. Of course, it has grown. The population before 1948, there were 100,000 Bedouin living in Israel, but Israel tried to kick out as many as possible during the war and the few years after that. So there were about 12,000 Bedouins living in the Negev in 1952. And because of poverty and because of oppression, it's a very fast growing population. And now we have 350,000 Bedouins, Arab Bedouins living in the Negev, who are part of the Palestinian minority. And half of them, just about half, live in unregulated and unrecognized villages. When I say unregulated, it means even those villages that were recognized are not yet planned. They do not have a plan, an urban plan, meaning they do not have a way to request a building permit. And while the government is demolishing all these homes, it is not giving out permits. The numbers are about 40 permits have been given over the last 5-6 years to build houses, but about 8,000 houses have been demolished. So it's just totally, ridiculous. You demolish without giving any other option to these people. And it was always bad, but it has become a lot worse. We actually had a small window of a feeling of it can get better, and it is getting better during the former government. But now with our new government, it's really bad. I mean, we have two ministers who are in charge of the Bedouin community. One is Shikli. He is also the minister in charge of the diaspora affairs. So he actually is the minister in charge of the diaspora affairs. And he also got a mandate to be in charge of the Bedouins. And so he's the one that is pushing for demolition of entire villages as fast as possible. And his partner, of course, is Ben Gvir. Ben Gvir, who is now in charge, he's the minister of the police. He actually has made sure he's not the minister for national security, but rather he works the police. And so he makes the police more brutal. He's forcing them to become more brutal. It's quite easy. He just promotes those who are brutal. And he also took upon himself to be in charge of the part in the government that decides which homes to demolish, which illegal, which means houses that don't have a permit, which is all those houses in all those villages. And so he is also stepping up the demolitions. And so we have Shikli and Ben Gvir now enjoying, because it gives them, they believe that they will receive, and they're probably right, they will receive more votes in the next election, the more harmful they are to the Bedouin minority. And so we have witnessed the total destruction of the village of al-Khiran, of the village of Wadi Khalil, of the neighborhood of Al-Ghul, of a neighborhood in Etnan. And this week, last Monday, the demolition of a neighborhood within the village of Aser, which means hundreds of people under the stars with no options. There's not like they can move somewhere else, no options. This week, a second neighborhood, and they promise that they will continue to demolish this village until all 2,000 residents do not have a roof over their heads and nowhere to go to. And so Lubna said she wished that you would be with us tomorrow at 10 o'clock Israel time in Beersheba. We're holding a demonstration. Demonstrations nowadays are scary for Jews. They are, 1,000 times more scary for Israelis, for Arabs, for Palestinians. And so we're all terrified, but we're all going to that demonstration. And we are really hoping that on the one hand, our voices are going to be heard, and on the other hand, that we will not suffer some terrible police violence. And here, I'm a Jew, and it's the role of the Jews to be partners with Palestinians, with Arabs, with the Arab Bedouin, when we go to these places, because we do have extra privilege, and we must use it in order to be with our partners to make a just Israel.
So you've spoken about that there are 36 villages, 100,000 people that are unrecognized. Now, this seems a crazy idea, right? All of these people, they were living there before the creation of the state. Why did some villages get recognized? Why were there some villages that are unrecognized? And what's the process by which you can actually get a village recognized? And when a village is recognized, what kinds of advantages do they have over an unrecognized village? Just some technical things to make sure that everybody here understands what this all means. Yeah,
Okay.
Lubna or Yeela?
No, I've got it. The government will destroy any village it believes it can. Okay, so the villages that got recognized are the ones which are sitting on their historical lands, and it's more difficult to push people off their historical lands than if they are already internally displaced. So al-Hiran is already an internally displaced village. Another, it has to be a very, a village with many people. So the example of Batin, they're actually a village with lots of numbers and they're not on a large piece of land. And so the government is happier to recognize it. And so the historical villages with lots of people were the first ones to get recognition. And that was, the government is trying to think, okay, what do I have no choice? That's the idea. I have no choice. Okay, it's worth my while. I cannot now relocate another 5,000 people who all live very close together. Where am I going? Those are the villages that get recognition first. We have also, these villages usually have had a school. The government eventually put a school there. So now what we do at the RCUV is we're trying to give all these items that might help them stay in the spots where we are advocating for schools. We're advocating to put inside the villages. Maybe that will increase their chances of being recognized in the future. We are, of course, trying to, what Lubna was talking about beforehand, trying to do everything we can to make life more bearable. So we have managed to bring water to these villages. They're not piped into the house, but they're piped closer to the house than they were beforehand. And they cost a little bit, they cost less, the water costs less than it did beforehand. In the past, people pay 25% of their salaries just on water. So the ones which are recognized are usually the larger ones, the historical ones, the ones which the government does not believe as much that it can forcefully relocate. What does it mean? It means a lot and it means nothing. It means a lot because that means the government is not going to try now to erase this village like it did in al-Hiran and Wadi Khalil and now with Asser, which is a huge thing. But on the other hand, it means very little because as long as that village is not planned, you can't build your house with a permit. And the government continues to try and force concentration through the planning process. So it's saying, okay, you can live in this village, but now you're going to live in these little pieces of land and lots and lots of people, you're going to be tighter together. And people don't want to do so. So it's an ongoing ongoing struggle with the government. Please let us live with the things that Lubna said in the beginning, with our culture, with our structure, with our village. Don't force upon us what you've managed to force upon Lubna's family.
Nevertheless, if we look statistically at the crime rates in villages in comparison to crime rates in what is recognized and built, you can guess the difference. The areas that are
Lubna, it's not guessable. You explain it. There's nothing they will guess.
No, I'm about to explain, but I would like to have a guess to let everyone have a guess. And I guess it might be a little clearer now that the townships, like a town like Lakia, like Rahat, where my mother comes from, are full of crime. These are forests of criminals, I call it, while the villages have almost nothing. And that difference itself, I think for a mother and for a father, it's good enough, this excuse for answering the government when being asked, why do you refuse to move to Lakia? Why do you refuse to move to Rahab? And every mother and every father say that because of the outcome. This is not something I want for my children. And that's just a very natural reaction of any parents. And the existing system that they live in the villages is working and is safe. And I know, and we all know that it will take time until these structures, the tribal structure, will dissolve within more of a modern system. And I think it should take its time. These spaces, these villages should take their time and also should have the decision. I was in Jordan a month ago, and I was building in there something. And I was very curious to hear about the Bedouin villages in Jordan because they don't face this government. And apparently in Jordan, the minute the roof of the house is built, you cannot demolish it. The minute the house has a roof on it, it cannot be demolished unless it's a very urgent, impossible, like in very rare circumstances, it happens. And that was crazy for a person that grew up watching demolitions all the time. My mother's house was demolished. The first story I got in touch with was the Aragib story, which was the most tragical story of a village being demolished. Suddenly I hear that for the Bedouins in Jordan, it's not something they fear. There is poorness because they weren't integrated with the modern system very well. There are other issues that can be dealt with, but the destruction happening from the government that's supposed to have you is not something that exists there. You can also see different kind of like Bedouins and villages where some choose to live in a regular standard house, others used to decide to live in a tent, some want to live in an agricultural village. So there's also a range that I don't think, Yeela, that until this day we had the time and the possibility to sit back and reflect on all the ways that people want to live in. Like the 100,000 people we speak about also want so many different things that should be dealt with delicately and each case in itself. And I think this is not the case. Right now, the government sees everyone as someone interrupting the space of the Negev, interrupting their dreams of what should be built in there. And that's just absurd. I don't know if you heard about the story of Al Hiran. Not only that it was demolished and the Jewish town was built right on top of it. And this, I think we don't speak enough about this case. We don't speak enough about this story. In what state, in what reality does a certain village get destroyed for another village to be built? It just doesn't make sense to the human being. And that's something we deal with in the villages. Now, the thing about the recognition and the distinguishing between the recognized and the unrecognized villages, also I want to add to the answer of Yeela, is that it has a lot to do with what happened after 1948, because ever since then we had two kinds of Bedouins. We had the Bedouins that were uprooted from their land in 1948 and stayed in the Negev, and the Bedouins that stayed on their land, and that's what Yeela called people on their historical lands. Now the one that lost their lands didn't mind entering any plan that the government planned for them because they don't have any land. It's either zero or half dunam. The people that still had their lands, that didn't lose them in 48, had a lot to lose with the deal with the government. It was either their land or 10% of it. So any human would say no to such a deal. I don't want to lose my land. So the people that stayed on their land, on the land of their grandfathers, they are the residents of the unrecognized villages, the ones that really existed in the land before 48. And that's the problem of the government, because it's very hard for the government to make a deal with someone that don't want to give up on his land, because for the government, it's the government's land. You see, and that's where the villages stand in front of the government. Now, with the existing government, it doesn't even lay in there. It's totally blinded. We are taking over the land. We are, when you spread a salt on a table, that's how we are perceived, as something randomly existing in space, something without roots, something that should be just controlled ASAP. And that's just it's very hard, because the hope to have someone to speak with about the fact that we are not nomads, we were semi-nomads, we were always existing on this land. I have recordings of my grandfather speaking about his land in the Sharia and the areas next to Gaza. This is like, you have people still visiting the land they lost. Each village that was uprooted still visit the land that they used to own. The connection of Bedouins to their villages is very natural, and something that I think that the Negev can grow out from this connection if it's dealt, if someone actually support it and see its value. I think it's the best thing that can happen to the Negev. And I say Negev because it's something that has been used so many times within the Israeli speech. Let's make the Negev great. Let's make the Negev green, right? You heard that. Ben Gurion says that, like, it exists in the slogans. And it's funny for me, because when I see the villages and I envision them existing more peacefully, doing their agriculture, living on the streams, that's when I see the Negev green, and that's when I see the Negev alive in the same vision. And I think this vision really serves us all, but the way it contradicts with the current ideology and mentality of this government, we are being erased. The vision is being erased. And that's something that is a bit hard. That's why I think I used to, within these discourses, within these forums, I used to speak about my vision. I used to have this dream. I used to be the hopeful one in the group. But currently, I really feel like the vision is being erased. And the opportunity I had to get my truth that was taken from me in the township, I feel like the coming youth won't have it. And that's the most tragical thing. And you must know it as rabbis and as people that look back on their roots and where they come from. And it's a very important act. And right now, this act, the possibility to do this, to reflect on our life, to look at the villages, is being erased. And the biggest problem, really the biggest problem, is not the action that is being taken, is the silence. The silence around what is happening in the Negev is unbearable. It's like watching a serious crime and seeing that no one cares, because we've been watching terrible things. And that for me is terrifying, because I feel like, because we were exposed to so many terrible things, the demolitions in the Negev are not that terrible. But that's not true. There are families now sleeping in schools because they were thrown from their houses to the streets. And I think that's just not, it doesn't make sense that we don't speak about it enough. Not in the Israeli news, not in the Western news. It seems like we are speaking about it with ourselves. And as much as I wanted this conversation to be about the vision and a call for you to join our work on this vision within the council, it's really taking a different direction due to what is happening. Of help us speak about what is happening to the villages more, because we don't have the resources to build homes for these families. We don't, but we can, together with you and others, we can make sure that this doesn't pass by silently, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't. Many of these people are teachers, work in governmental offices, have dreams, and now they dismantled their houses with their own hands. Now, I'm sure this does a lot of harm to the human, and I don't know what ages can grow out of this trauma, to be honest. I'm sorry, I took a lot of
No, no.
niskhafti, as you say in Hebrew, niskhafti, but
Mhm.
it's been boiling. This week, I see that not enough, even my friends in the diaspora are not speaking about it enough. And I don't know if I'm disappointed. I think we're just all traumatized, but I do believe that we should not give up. As long as these evil forces are working, we should be working. And that's something I believe in. As long as the bad people are operating on the ground, we should operate even harder. And if it is in youth, in advocacy, we should do that.
So one of the things that we do have, and if people didn't see it in the chat, I encourage you to go into the chat to be able to sign this petition against mass displacement. And certainly with everything that's happening in Gaza and the West Bank, that's getting a lot more publicity. You're right, this is flying under the radar, as we say, that people don't know about this as much. And I also think that there's a certain amount of propaganda, certainly that I've heard about these the villages, that people have said, well, there's 100,000 people and they're going to take up so much land. And so that's why we need to concentrate the Bedouin in the townships. I was in Haran about 9 years ago when there was a surveyor out on the land, and when the village was still there before they had demolished it, surveying the land to build the Jewish village that is now there. So I know that this has been going on, obviously, since the creation of the state, and it has sped up over the last few years with the new government. And I think that what we're all curious to know about is what can be done and what would be a fair settlement, to say, this is how much space the Bedouin can have. They're not taking up the whole Negev, because there's also a lot of propaganda out there saying they're just taking up the whole Negev and they're going to take all the space. And if we don't stop this, there won't be any space for the Jews to live there. So how do you answer that? In terms of letting people really understand how 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 much space the Bedouin have in that area, and what how to address the propaganda that we hear in the United States and in Israel, frankly.
The Bedouin community, the Negev used to be theirs. Before 1947, the Negev was only used by Bedouin. The Bedouin nowadays are about 40% of the population of the Negev. And we've taken all but 3.5% of the land from them. So it's the numbers are stark. I mean, that's it. And there's a question, is there any response from the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court needs to uphold laws, not necessarily justice. And since the law, the building and planning law, which is a good law, it tells people how to build how to request permission to build their houses and how they're supposed to build their houses, has not seen the Bedouins. They don't exist. This is why we call them unrecognized. And you must be in a community that is on the map in order to have an urban plan, in order to request a building permit. And so as long as these houses are not built with a permit, the court can and does allow for the demolitions. But I'm being a bit too kind to the Israeli court system. the village of Wadi Khalil that was demolished a year ago, the government told the Supreme Court in Daphne Barak Erez that the route number 6 is going to go through this village, and we need to destroy the village totally today because we are starting the building today, the creation of this road. But we all knew that this is not true, that the road, the planning of the road was stalled for another few years. And the people were willing to move to another location, but the government was not yet doing what it was needed to be done in order to prepare the infrastructure. It was planned already, but there was no infrastructure. So the government was slow, and so they had no place to move to, even though agreed to move to this place. And the government was really fast to destroy the village. I was there during those demolitions, and I spoke to one of the people there, one of the people that was not a policeman, and I said, "Why are you doing this? They agreed to move. They will do it. Why do you destroy their homes when there is no other place to move to? Wait till their homes are built, then come and destroy that, if you need to, destroy those houses." And he said, "You know what? You were right. We know it's a stupid move, but we were told to do so." He didn't say by Ben-Gvir, but it was obvious. So what we're experiencing today is cruelty for the sake of cruelty.
I can also say from my behalf that in the late 70s, my grandfather could, with the help of the Supreme Court, obtain back the lands we lost in 48. And there was some value to the court, and many people did that. But that's really is not the case right now. Currently, the villages that go to the court are the first villages to have demolitions. So people are avoiding to go to the court because they lose money, and then they also get demolitions. That's the current situation right now.
I mean, the governments before this government should have recognized the villages and should have planned the villages. So it's not like this is the bad government. They were all, allowing this to happen today. But there's a difference in the intensity of the cruelty since this new government. What we're hoping for, and this also, I'm turning to you guys now too. We're hoping, first of all, that we will have a different government that will be elected. But we're also hoping that this new government that will be elected will understand that maintaining these villages in this state of non-recognition and not planned is a problem not just for the people who live in these houses. It is a problem for the state of Israel. Because then Ben-Gvir and people like Ben-Gvir can show, oh, look, these guys are a problem. Let's demolish their homes. Ben-Gvir will get more mandates for it. People will vote for him for that. And as long as the government does not put its act together, and it should, it's been almost 80 years now, then the bad guys can use it and can harm everybody, not just the Bedouin.
So I just want to go to some of the questions that we have, quite a few questions in the chat. And there's a question about the JNF, Jewish National Fund, Karen Kemet Israel, KKL, which is its Israeli counterpart. They have now tried to separate themselves legally and organizationally. But what is the role, that the JNF plays in what's been happening in terms of the demolitions of demolishing these villages?
The JNF has a lot to do with afforestation. So sometimes the oppression and the unwillingness to acknowledge people existing on their land takes different shapes. And demolitions are one shape of it that is being produced by governmental bodies, different governmental bodies. Other shapes of doing that are like taking the land through forestation. And this really happens following the plans of GNF and other bodies that paint certain areas with green and decide that this is meant for forestation, and while these land actually belong to different families and people that wake up to find trees being planted on their lands that they were supposed to inherit or grow in. So that's one very clear shape of how the GNF takes place within this context. There's other, I guess, behind the scenes that is the roots of it. We see at the end, we see the tree, but this tree has literal and also unliteral roots. Many things happen in the tables of the GNF regarding the lands of the Negev, ignoring the existence of the Bedouins.
Furthermore, the Israeli Land Authority, a big part of the people making the decisions in the Israeli Land Authority are the people of the JNF. So on the one hand, we don't have representation from the Palestinian minority who are citizens of Israel inside the Israeli Land Authority. And on the other hand, we have you guys through the JNF in dealing with our lands. And so that way, the government can make sure, or the Israeli Land Authority can make sure, that the Palestinian minority is totally excluded from making decisions on the land in our state. So it's got lots of layers.
So Lobna, there's a question here that maybe you would have some maps to show where or maybe even Yeela, you have them of where the unrecognized Bedouin villages are, and then some of what the plans are in terms of what you've been trying to do architecturally, so people have a sense of the area that we're talking about. You're on mute, Lobna.
Oh. I say that I can send on the chat, but if Yeela
Okay.
can open from, if you can open from your computer.
I can open from my computer. I'll show you a map, but I need to be able to share.
Okay. Ron, maybe you can make Yeela able to share. I'm not able to do that. Okay, well, Ron sets that up for us. I'll go to some other questions that don't require it, or they require the sharing. So there's some question about the protest that's going to be in Beersheba. Can you explain how many people are expecting to be at this protest? What is the protest asking for? How can we, from afar, be supportive of that protest?
We are expecting thousands. I'm hoping 3,000, 5,000, hopefully, okay? But let's say 1,000 to 3,000, which is a huge number considering how scary it is. And how you can support is we will share with you pictures, information, because we're doing the work. Please share it on. Please share it on. Please ask anybody that you can inside either the Jewish community, ask our what do you call them, our ambassadors and the people that represent Israel in the United States. Ask Shikli, he's in charge of the diaspora affairs. What's going on? Why is this protest here? What are you doing to the houses of these people? Why are you destroying houses, specifically this village of Aser that's in the process of destruction right now? They agreed to move to this neighborhood that Israel has not yet started to, there is no infrastructure, there's no place to move to. But they're destroying the houses, and it will happen at least 3 more years until there are a place to move to. Okay, I'm going to look for the map, and if you want to add stuff, Lubna.
Yeah, I think that that awareness, adding it to the discourse, sharing the story, speaking about it, coming to visit, and realizing maybe together with us and together with these questions, what it really means for a historical village to be erased without anyone noticing, what it really means to a certain place, what it means to have history being erased so easily, what it means to have citizens being thrown to the street very easily, and just ask those questions. I think I ask this question to myself, and I ask this question to the people doing this. One of the reasons that many of the thinkers think that this is happening now is because no one is looking. Everyone is too busy with everything happening in Gaza, the West Bank, and we want to disprove that, to make sure that even though a lot is happening, everyone is looking on what you are doing in the South. And I think that might make a change. I want to believe that it might make a change.
So Yeela, I think that you do now have permission to share if you want to show us any of those maps.
I'm looking for them. So
Okay, great. So a question was asked, and I think that sometimes what's confusing to people is that this is within the state of Israel. These are people who are citizens of the state of Israel, and we see certainly destruction that's happening in the West Bank, No Other Land, which just won the Academy Award for documentary film. A lot of people have seen and see what's happening, but we see similar things. Obviously, what you're talking about is these are happening within the state. So one of the questions is, can there be a resolution to what is happening with the Bedouin in the Negev before there is any peace agreement with Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, obviously too. Lobna, I'm off
I
mute.
didn't quite understand the question. Can you repeat
So
that, please,
yeah,
Andrea?
so the question is, can there be a resolution to the issues that the Bedouin are facing in terms of recognizing these villages, allowing them to build, etc., before there is a resolution of the entire conflict with the Palestinians who are not citizens of the state, who live in the West Bank and Gaza? Could we find a resolution to this issue?
It has its own context, no doubt.
Mhm.
It has its own resolution. And we also think that we should not ignore this. We are not the Masafer Yatta in the West Bank, and we are not Gaza. We have different neighbors, and we have different kind of partnerships. We have a lot of, the context is very different and has been very different. And we do think about that, like a lot of the effort happening in the council is actually to try to bridge between the life of the villages and what is accepted by the government. We don't ignore totally let's say, from my point of view, the let's say building laws in here. We don't totally ignore them. We actually want to bridge between them, between this body responsible on our life and our needs. We want to build this bridge. And to build this bridge, you really need to understand the specific context that the villages exist within. But that's for the long-term vision, and for the daily life. Eventually, the villages are very much dependent on Israel, and this is something we want to learn how to improve and make the best out of. We don't want to get thrown out of it within a blind political argument, We want to see ourselves as part of the sphere, not fear, sphere. And we do that in different ways. My direction in terms of planning is building this bridge. It's not about pushing the government out. It's actually about translating our needs to a government that just does not understand and don't want to understand right now.
So you asked for maps, and I've got here 3 maps. This will be just 1967 borders. So we're talking about this area is the area that the okay, this is the first map. So if you can see, this is an entire Negev map, and it's divided according to the names of the tribes that were living in this area of this is the Dead Sea, this is the Mediterranean, okay? So they all lived in this Negev area. They were pushed into this circle, and this circle is about over here. This is pushing between in the early 1950s. So everybody was pushed into here, and there were people that were living here. As you can see, there were Bedouins living here. And if I'll move this over a bit, hold on. Whoops, not working. No, there we go. So this is the map of our villages. If I can even make it a bit bigger. Opa. Okay. You can see the red squares are the villages that have been recognized. The blue circles are villages which are not yet recognized. This is the Israeli Air Force base that was put into here in the 1980s, again pushing Bedouins away from land. This whole siege is about this whole triangle of which the people were pushed into is about a 10% of the Negev. And this Air Force base is 10% of the siege, so more land was taken away. We have in light blue the townships. This is Alagia, so this is where Lubna was born. This is Arad. This is a Jewish township. This is where I grew up. So this is the map. I'll make it smaller again so you can have all of them together. So this is the Bedouin lands before 1948 were pushed into here. And this was a map of all the others, of everything. Okay. Rabbi, we can't see.
Also, I also sent a link in the chat for a simple map, but it's more interactive that you can open in your computer and see each village. It has its dot. You can also see it within the aerial images. It gives you a very clear the perspective of how the villages are spread, and what in the blue line, it's the villages that got recognized, and the rest are unrecognized. It's very simple and clear.
And this is
In the
the
link,
work
you can.
that Lubna is doing within the RCUV. She's documenting, she's making it public. So this is a huge part of us making the villages seen.
So I think that before we conclude, if you can just let us know what kind of success you've had recently, so that we can end on a positive note. And then again, we have put in the chat not only the maps, but the petition that you can sign about what we've heard today about what Shikli and Ben Gvir are doing in the region. But let's see if we can tell us what the things you've accomplished through the RCUV.
I also put in the chat a link to our newsletter. So please click on that and register, please. Andrea, Rabbi Andrea, it's not fair. You're talking in Shikli terms and Ben Gvir terms. What have we succeeded? We got to you guys. We're not totally silent. And I'd like to go back 2 years, if I may. And during the Mimshelet HaShinui, the government of change, I don't know what it's called in English, in which Yair Lapid and, most important, Mansour Abbas and Raanan decided to join this coalition. And okay, Eric, I'll send it again. We managed to bring about inside the 1 year that we had this government, we got 4 villages recognized. That's a huge thing. And so it means that we know that it can work. We just need people who are less ruthless than Ben Gvir and Shikli to be there for us. Lubna? Oh, and one more thing, sorry, while I'm at it. We do have Nati Yefet, who is our media guy, and he does make a difference. He shames those reporters who just take the information given by the police and writes it as an information uh, uh, item. And he pushes out information as much as it's possible to our media in Israel. And so we're managing to try and make these cracks and go through them. Sorry, Lubna, your turn.
It's a hard question. Supposedly, I should answer supposedly. I think as long as the situation is like it is, I did not witness concrete village being how it should look like, but hopefully we are on the right direction. One of the things I've really worked on is the whole mapping techniques. Like how do you make a map to an areas that are usually refusing being mapped? And what do people choose to show on the map? When you tell them this is going to be a map, where do they take you? What do they show? And what was actually built within this work, and what I realized was that there is a planning, because many of the planners usually map, you know that. We map in order to plan, right? That's the order. And what I realized is that when I mapped the villages or started mapping them in my own way or their own way, our own way, is that there's already a plan. It exists. What we can do now is to communicate it with the bodies, with the government, with planners, with architects, with whoever wants to work on professionally planning the villages. And I do believe in professions. I do think that there's a huge professional work needed for the villages, but there's an amazing plan already existing for the villages that should be acknowledged and valued. And from there, we can actually make more amazing plan. And that's an achievement. This realization that happened after the mapping we've done in the villages is an achievement, I think, itself. I hope, I really hope. Just so many years of my life won't go for nothing. And I think so, yes, it has its value. Also, the whole process of the mapping is followed by documentation. So every village we work with is also the process documented. And it's, as I said in the beginning, it's something that is very important when we speak about constant threat of erasure. So the village is mapped and also documented. And I'm sorry that this is something we need to do just to be remembered, but that's the situation now. Other things, I think, is this web we are creating. As Yeela said, there is Yeela, Nati, and the other bodies and forces operating to support the villages, and it's a very strong web that is getting stronger when things get harder. I think that's also an achievement to create this community that serves the villages as much as possible. I really want to believe that my work in the council also brings further the discourse around spaces and how we can build and how we can use maps for ourselves. How that tool that we always fear is a tool we can make, we can use. We can recognize the villages ourselves. Like I can take an aerial image and say, this is the village of Rachame, and that the village is recognized by me and by my community. And I think this in itself is an empowering act I want to believe is happening, but that's my personal faith rather than achievement. I think this is where things are standing right now.
And we are preparing for the next government. We are very optimistic. We will have another government. We will not become totally fascist. And and when the next government comes, we will be ready with what Lubna is doing, with our ideas of what must be done next. And we will not wait for a year. We'll be ready when it comes.
Amen. Ron, are we
Thank you.
wrapping up here?
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you, Yeela, Lubna, Andrea, and everyone who joined us. We hope you, I always say, these webinars aren't necessarily enjoyable, but we hope you found them informative and enriching. We've been trying to, with everything that's going on since October 7th, and especially in Gaza, since October 8th, we've been trying to keep everyone's focus not just on Gaza, but on the West Bank and here in the Negev, Naqab. We'll try to keep on bringing those webinars. I'll note again that today's program has been free, but generous contributions are what enable the organization to deliver these events at no cost. By the way, in the few seconds we have left, the sign-on letter link appears in the chat a few times. So if you want to grab that, click onto it. You don't have to sign it right now, but just click onto it, save it, and then please sign on so that you can add your voice to the people who are rejecting the idea of mass displacement. Thank you for coming, and we hope to see you next time. And thank you to our panel once again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys, for listening and for inviting us.
Thank you
Pleasure.
so much.
Thank-
Thank you so much
Thank
to
you.
Yeela and Lobna. Looking forward to being together with you in a few months. I also, you should know that through the NIF, you can make donations directly to the RCUV, the Regional Council for Unrecognized Villages with RCUV. So I think that that's important also to know that it's easy for Americans to do that. And I would like to encourage you to do that and to support this amazing work and these amazing people on the ground who are doing it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.